When people think of the Titanic, they think of the iceberg, the sinking ship, and the more than 1,500 lives lost on that cold April night in 1912. But among the survivors were people with stories so unbelievable, they sound like they came from a movie. A baby who became the Titanic's last living survivor, a couple who chose death over separation, a baker who somehow survived in freezing water, and a woman who cheated death not once, but 3 times. These are the untold stories of Titanic survivors. Story 1. The baby who became the last survivor. The youngest passenger aboard the Titanic was a little girl named Milvina Dean. She wasn't even 3 months old. In fact, she was only 9 weeks old when the Titanic struck the iceberg. Her family was emigrating to America in search of a better life. When the evacuation began, Milvina, her mother, and her older brother were placed into a lifeboat, but her father stayed behind. He never survived. Because she was just a baby, Milvina had no memory of the disaster. Yet she spent nearly her entire life connected to the Titanic story. For decades, she attended Titanic events. When she died in 2009 at the age of 97, the last living survivor of the Titanic was gone. Story 2. The couple who refused to separate. Among the wealthiest passengers were Isidore and Ida Strauss. The couple had been married for more than 40 years. As lifeboats were being lowered, officers offered Isidore a place, but he refused. He would not take a seat while other men remained on board. Then Ida was offered a place. She could have escaped. Instead, she stepped back from the lifeboat. According to witnesses, she told her husband, "Where you go, I go." The last time they were seen, they were standing side by side on the deck as the Titanic sank beneath the Atlantic. Story 3. The baker who survived the impossible. Charles Jugan was the Titanic's chief baker. When disaster struck, he helped load people into lifeboats and threw chairs overboard to help survivors float. But as the ship finally disappeared, he ended up in the freezing Atlantic himself. The water temperature was around -2 degrees Celsius. Most people died within minutes. Yet, Charles somehow survived. For nearly 2 hours, he remained in the icy water before being rescued. Story 4. The woman who survived 3 ship disasters. If there was one person who seemed impossible to kill, it was Violet Jessup. In 1911, she was on board the Olympic when it collided with another ship. She survived. A year later, she was on board the Titanic. Then, during World War I, she served as a nurse aboard the Britannic. The Britannic struck a mine and sank. And somehow, Violet survived that disaster too. 3 major ship disasters, 3 miraculous escapes. Because of her incredible luck, she became known as the Unsinkable Woman. Story 5. The Titanic Orphans. Among the survivors were 2 young brothers, Michel and Edmund Navratil. Their father had secretly taken them aboard during a custody dispute. When the ship began sinking, he placed the boys into a lifeboat. It was the last time they ever saw him. After the rescue, nobody knew who the children were. Newspapers around the world called them the Titanic Orphans. Eventually, their mother recognized them in a newspaper. What began as one of the Titanic's greatest mysteries ended with an emotional reunion. The Titanic disaster wasn't just a story about a ship. It was a story about people, about courage, sacrifice, luck, love, and survival against impossible odds. These stories still remind us why the Titanic remains one of the most fascinating tragedies in human history.